Hi, I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association of Indiana. We are at the midway point in the Indiana General Assembly, so I want to talk about some bills that have passed a chamber of the House. On Monday, the Senate and the House will start again. The Senate will take up House bills, and the House will take up Senate bills in the first step, which is the committee process. The bill goes through 3 steps: committee, floor amendment, and floor final vote. We've done that so far in the first half. Bills are switching over. So I've got 7 bills I want to mention to you today very quickly. House Bill 1001 or 1001, the budget bill. Added to this bill late in the session was an amendment to prevent tax dollars from going to fund the Kinsey Institute, which is a sex research institute at IU. That should be funded with private donations, should not be funded with your tax dollars, especially given the rather dark and controversial history of Dr. Kinsey, his agenda, and some of the things he did on studying children with sexual research that was frankly just disgusting. So I don't think tax dollars should go there. We'll see what the Senate does with House Bill 10001 and the amendment that was added to the budget preventing your tax dollars from going to the Kinsey Institute. Next bill is House Bill 1407. It's a parental rights bill. I've mentioned this bill before. A very important bill that says parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their child. It also has in there language that says the Department of Corrections cannot remove a child from a home in a non-abusive case where the parents have a disagreement over gender ideology or pronouns. That's not considered abuse. We certainly have a role to protect children. DCS plays a role in that. There are times when they have to remove a child from an unsafe home, but a different ideology or difference in view on this topic is not an abusive home. So that's House Bill 1407. House Bill 1569 is one I haven't talked about a lot, passed fairly easily in the House with a solid vote. It says that your tax dollars cannot go for the Department of Corrections to pay for transgender surgeries on prisoners. You should not have to pay for creating a lifelong patient because it's not just the surgery. It's a lifetime thereafter of mental counseling, drugs, and follow-up procedures and things like that. Taxpayers don't need to pay for that for prisoners who are gender confused. They need counseling. They don't need us to pay for these very expensive hundreds of thousands of dollars for these surgeries. And that's just not a good use of tax dollars. House Bill 1608, this is a bill that says teachers cannot talk about human sexuality from kindergarten through 3rd grade. These are very young children. Frankly, I think it should go to 5th grade, if truth be known, because sex education isn't taught in schools until 6th grade. But this protects not only students from inappropriate content, but it also protects teachers from being drawn into these controversies, regardless of their viewpoint on gender ideology or human sexuality. The best answer for a teacher when a child breaches this subject is you can talk to your parents about that. Now, teachers can, answer questions, but they can't teach on these topics. So it protects teachers from these hot button issues. It also respects the rights of parents to bring up that issue with their children. Next bill is in the Senate. Next 3 bills actually are Senate bills. So those Senate bills are now in the House for consideration. First one is Senate Bill 12. Talked about this before. This is an issue that's come up 3 or 4 years in a row. Hopefully this year it will finally pass. Senate Bill 12 protects children from matter harmful to minors. This is not a book banning bill. This is not a bill about getting rid of Tom Sawyer or To Kill a Mockingbird or any other classic. Frankly, I think schools don't teach classics enough. The stuff we're talking about, matter harmful to minors, is sexually inappropriate materials with content that kids are having to read that is frankly a lot of new books. I wish schools would go back to some of the older books that aren't controversial in terms of graphic sexual depictions of things that happen to kids or kids are doing that are outraging parents all across Indiana. That bill passed the House or the Senate with a very strong vote. Hopefully it'll pass the House with a similar strong vote, but it has to go through those 3 steps again: the committee process, floor amendments, and the final vote. The next bill is Senate Bill 350. 350 is an important bill because it's a free speech bill for counselors and pastors. It says that a local municipality or county cannot pass an ordinance restricting the free speech of pastors and counselors on what they say regarding human sexuality. It comes from a case out of Lafayette where there City Council came very close to passing an ordinance that would have hurt a lot of counselors and pastors in the specific church in particular that has a big counseling ministry there. But other cities have tried this. I mean, think of California. This goes beyond just counseling on human sexuality. In California, in fact, I read a bill yesterday in Illinois, right next door to us. In both those states, those liberal states are trying to tell crisis pregnancy centers you must refer for patients to abortion facilities or talk about abortion, even though those centers are founded on pro-life values. That is a free speech issue. The government should not tell people what they can and cannot say. As a matter of counseling, when people voluntarily go, seek out that counselor and want to hear advice from them. The state shouldn't be saying, you can say this, but you can't say that. That's simply wrong. So this bill hopefully will pass in the House with a strong vote as well. That's Senate Bill 350. The last bill I'm going to mention, you've probably read about in the newspapers, Senate Bill 480. Took several hours of testimony on this. I was there watching it, watched the floor debate. A very interesting bill, but it simply says children under the age of 18 cannot receive puberty-blocking drugs or gender reassignment surgeries until they are adults. This is a life-changing decision. It doesn't talk about counseling. It's a life-changing decision when you take these medical steps and you take these risky drugs or these surgeries that affect a child for life. We had several people testify who had gone through these procedures and regretted it and the harms that those things did to their body. Now, I'll say this, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but it's probably shown up in the media because the media is kind of left of center, as you know. There was talk about contraceptives and other things. Look, a contraceptive is a fairly low-dose hormone. It doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change your gender. We're not talking about that. This is about high doses of puberty-blocking drugs that do things that are not natural to a child's development, that stunt their growth in that area, that change their body, and that's just dangerous. The research shows it doesn't help the mental health problems. The longest study ever conducted on this was out of Sweden, when over 30 years of people who had gone through this process followed them for 2 decades afterwards or more and found that 10, 15, 20 years after these surgeries and after these drugs, they still had a disproportionately high, up to 19 times higher rate of suicide, mental health counseling, and depression after they transitioned. So telling children, hey, you've got confusion, if you just take these drugs or take this surgery, it will align things, it will fix your problems. It's not true. The research doesn't show that. So we call this the Help Not Harm Bill because these things harm children. You know, we don't allow kids to buy a lottery ticket until they're 18, to buy alcohol till they're 21, to buy a firearm till they're 21, or a rifle or shotgun until they're 18. You can't vote till you're 18. Why in the world would you allow a child to do these drastic things to their body that frankly is not natural when they ought to be counseling? Most kids will grow through this, through puberty, and revert to their biological sex. So this is something the state is simply saying, if you want to do this, you have to wait till you're 18. So those 7 bills, House Bill 1001 on Kinsey, 1407 on parental rights, 1569 regarding the Department of Corrections and surgeries, and 1608 K through 3 sex education. No discussions of that for you little kids, 5-year-olds. Those are all in the Senate now. Senate Bill 12 on matter harmful to minors, Senate Bill 350 on free speech for pastors and counselors is in the House as well, and Senate Bill 480 on no transgender surgeries for minors. Those are in the House. So you can call your senator about House bills and call your House member about Senate bills. Until next week, and now we're starting off slow. I may or may not do a video next week, depends on what happens. I'm going to be taking a trip with my family, but if need be, I'll certainly join you next week. I appreciate you joining us today. Appreciate you reading our emails on Wednesday. Those are very important. We give a lot more details then. So thank you for joining me. Have a great weekend.